The correlation between leadership and relationships share a vital heartbeat of connection between the two, and sometimes the failures in our lives are the way that we grow and develop our growth mindsets. Take it from Jason A. Hunt. He's been a leader since his teenage years. At 19 in Siberia, he nearly failed as a school principal, and now he runs an effective and successful leadership training company. He joined me this week to impart his wisdom on how we can all become effective leaders and to share some of his stories of caution and great triumph. Are you ready to have a great conversation? If you answered yes, I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. Jason, if you're ready, I'll welcome you to the program, and I'm excited to talk to you this afternoon about effective leadership. Great to see you this morning, or this afternoon rather, and thanks for taking a few minutes.
Absolutely.
Hey, Jason, I want to start you off by asking you if you can recount your experience as a middle school principal, where I think your whole philosophy of leadership sort of evolved or sort of evolved during your time in education. So I'm going to ask you to recount that experience for me.
Yeah, Kevin, I'd love to share only because I think that a lot of leaders or people wanting to get in leadership probably could relate to this. So I wanted to be in leadership for a long time. As I was going through college, I decided I wanted to be a school principal. I got my, teachings degree, and then I ended up getting my administrator certificate and was an administrator in a handful of schools up in the Twin Cities area of Minnesota. And on one June day, a smaller school district called me up and said, "Hey, Jason, how would you like to be our junior high principal?" And of course, this was my career goal, right? So I was super excited about it. I did the happy dance. We moved the whole family down from the cities to Owatonna, Minnesota. And everything that happened that first year was just beautiful. It was exactly as I expected leadership to be. People were nice to me. They did what I asked them to do. They invited me to events. I mean, it was great. And then year two hit. And year two, the gloves came off. And I'd recognized that I was working in an extremely toxic environment, of which I think I created. And I knew this because there's a lot of negative feedback. There was no stats that were great with the students. Their attendance was down, behavior issues were up. We were losing staff members left and right. And I was freaking out as a leader because I was doing everything I possibly could do, but it just wasn't working, to the point where there are multiple days where I just kind of went, and there's this portable classroom in the back of the school that wasn't used. I went and hid. Numerous days I was like, just get me out of this. I was just really frustrated about my inability to be able to lead the school. What happened next is I decided to stick around. We've got 4 kids and we needed life insurance. So I couldn't just leave the school district. I had to stick around. And I put on some thick skin and decided to start asking questions of our staff. And they were questions like, I've been a principal for 2 years. I've been your principal for 2 years, and it's not going super well. Tell me what has gone on? Give me some feedback. What could I do better? And Kevin, there was one particular teacher. She was the union president. So we didn't really see eye to eye on a lot of things, but I knew she was a straight shooter. And I decided to go and talk to her. And she took her arm around me and said, "Oh, Jason, you're really messed up when it comes to leadership." Which hurt. She told me that leadership wasn't about my title. It's not about managing things. It's not about the amount of knowledge that I have. It was really about connecting with people. And she said this. She said, "It's kind of like you're a locomotive going full steam ahead, but you've not connected to any boxcars. And a locomotive without any boxcars is useless." And that was the moment that I just decided that I need to change as a leader. My leadership style was not working for that school. And it is what directed me towards people-centric leadership.
And tell me about the four elements that you've created that can help influence anyone.
Yeah. So what I later learned was leadership is all about influence. I came across a person who's a mentor of mine now, John C. Maxwell. He's written a million books. But one of those books was the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. And in chapter 2 of that book, it says that leadership is influence. I had the title, but I had no influence with my staff. There were other teachers, like a particular social studies teacher, that had tremendous influence with the staff and no title. And just suddenly the light bulb went on, like, wow, this is what it is. It doesn't matter about pay. It doesn't matter about title. It doesn't matter about position. What matters is your ability to connect with people and influence them. And so over the course of time, it's taken several years to be able to develop, I've created a program called Full Body Leadership. And there's 4 components in that: a heart that cares, a head that connects, hands that collaborate, and feet that show courage. So care, connection, collaboration, and courage. Those are 4 components that I found anybody can use, no matter what walk of life you're in, to be able to intentionally grow your influence and make a bigger impact on people.
Jason, we both share a similar kinship on our willingness and wanting other people to effectively communicate and express themselves. And you say that we all communicate, but very few of us really know how to connect. So I'm wondering if you can expand on that for me a little bit.
Absolutely. Thanks for asking that, Kevin. And you're right. There are so many people that just communicate and communicate and communicate. They think that leadership is about talking. It's about, and obviously you need to share a vision, you need to inspire, you need to encourage. I get that. But most leaders talk way too much. And therefore, they're just communicating and they're not connecting with their employees. They're not connecting with people around them. So I think there's 3 kind of degrees as I look at it in regards to how people can connect. 1 degree is a superficial connection. So if you and I get together, just like when we first started this call, we chatted about the weather. If that's the only thing we ever talk about is the weather, and don't get offended at this, or sports, we might be at the superficial level relationship, because everybody can talk about that. It doesn't mean there's any loyalty that I have to you. It doesn't mean you've got any loyalty to me. There's almost no trust, and we can still talk about the weather or sports. That's the first degree of connection. The second degree is business. So we find ourselves out grabbing a drink with some other employees, and the only thing we can talk about is the business we're in. We're at that level. We're at the second degree of connection. Not a bad place to be, but not at the place we need to be to really connect with people. That third degree, the third level, is the most crucial place for all leaders to get to. And that's a personal connection with people. That's where I understand what you dream about and sing about and cry about. It's where we ask deep questions and have deeper conversations. It's where I've got loyalty to you, where if you've screwed up or made it some kind of bad decision that might affect my relationship with you, I'm still going to hang in there with you, right? I'm still going to be there because we've developed that degree of trust. And that happens at the third level, or the personal degree of connecting. So, too many people, I think, focus on the first and second levels. They ask dumb questions, which I call don't use my brain, just simple questions that don't get deep into a relationship. And they don't have the courage to be able to ask those types of questions and build a deeper relationship with folks. And so they just say at a superficial level.
And Jason, I'm curious to get your thoughts on what do you think makes an effective listener as well?
That's a great question. I think the common cold of bad leadership is poor listening. We just don't do it well. Stephen Covey talks about 5 levels of leadership, 5 levels of listening. And his very top level is called empathetic listening, where we're listening so well that we're actually feeling the same feeling that the other individual is going through. People can relate to this. Almost all of us have had somebody in our lives that had been diagnosed with the terrible news of cancer. And so we've been in that conversation, and they'll sit down and, it might be a casual conversation about sports or weather or anything else. And then suddenly they tell us that they have cancer. And suddenly, no matter where we were, we're there present at the moment, right? They start to cry, we start to cry. Our hearts are almost bonded together. We can do that outside of the terrible episode of cancer. We can do that almost on a daily basis if we really want to. Most of us instead interrupt people, think about our agenda, and don't put other people before ourselves. So we don't take the time to listen. We don't stop and pause after people are done conversing to allow them to expand more. It just doesn't happen. Our goal in any situation, any conversation should be, how can I get to that level of empathetic listening?
And Jason, I want to talk for a moment about people-centric leadership, which you know a little bit about, of course. And I'm also curious if you could tell me in your answer, as you know, I do a lot of work with individuals with disabilities. I have a disability myself, so I'm wondering your thoughts on how leaders can effectively incorporate individuals with disabilities, and your keys to people-centric leadership as well.
That's great. So I have a brother in Michigan that just got into leadership. He's a manager of a few people in a technology business. And he asked me the question, he says, Jason, give me some advice. Like, what's the first things that I should be doing as a new leader? Because naturally what we want to do is get involved in, setting up our office, making sure our computer systems are all straight, going through procedures and going through, different practices that we have, and then, coming up with some great plan. I don't think people really care about that kind of stuff as much as we might think they do. I think people care more about our willingness to be able to go and build a relationship with them, right? Are we able to put people above processes? So people-centric leadership is doing just that. It's focusing, it's recognizing that our number one job, our responsibility as a leader is not necessarily saying how much of a profit we can get. It's more about developing relationships with those that we lead and helping them become better, which I think is exactly the attitude we need to have when we're talking about diversity and inclusion. This world cannot operate if we're all quarterbacks. If we're all the same, you can't have a good team, right? I mean, you need the quarterback, you need the receiver, there's multiple positions that we need, and everybody that comes to the table has strengths and skills. Naturally, as humans, we don't tend to focus on those very well at all. My son, 2 years ago, brought home a report card, and on that report card, he had a C- in math. Everything else was A's and B's, but math was a C-. Kevin, guess what the first thing is we focused on when we looked at the report card?
Math.
Exactly right, right. Hunts don't get C's. What are we gonna do about this, son? And we told him, we're gonna talk to the teacher and get more help in class and get more help after school, and maybe get a private tutor and all that kind of stuff. The very best we can expect when we focus on his weaknesses is average, and nobody likes average. Average doesn't sell. Average doesn't contribute. What would happen though if we looked at his grade in science, and his science grade was an A, and say, hey, you got an A there. What could we do to help you expand your knowledge, to deepen your skill set, to really focus on your strength in this area? Imagine where we could go with that. And when we look at diversity and inclusion, again, naturally, our mind just kind of goes to those weaknesses. Somebody might look at you, Kevin, and say, well, gosh, there's this problem or this issue or this kind of challenge he might be facing on a daily basis. That's just kind of naturally where our brains go, but that's not how we need to look at it. We need to reverse that mentality and say, hey, everybody has strengths. Kevin, let's talk and figure out what your strengths are. And then I want to figure out how we can be able to expand and magnify these strengths. Honestly, I mentioned from the onset that I've got a lot of respect for you because I think you've done that personally. I think you've recognized, hey, you know what? I've got a pretty good ability of thinking through questions. I've got a pretty good ability of asking people, some things that might be a little bit personal. I've got a good ability of being able to carry on a conversation, of being able to, voice and express my opinions, of putting things together in writing, of using technology. You saw those things as strengths, and look at what you're doing now. And imagine if every leader in every company looked at everybody through the lens of a strength instead of weaknesses. Diversity and inclusion would be a problem. It wouldn't even be a subject we talk about anymore, because we would naturally see, all right, that person's got this strength and this strength and this strength. Let's build this team together. We're going to move forward. We all would be involved.
Hey, Jason, I want to thank you for the compliment and your kind words. They're most appreciated. And I also connected with you through your story because you also say one of the biggest tenets of being a good leader is the ability to empower the people who work for you to make decisions. So can you elaborate on that for me? As I really believe that's important as well.
It is crucial, critically important. As mentioned before, the number one responsibility of every leader is to develop those that you're leading. It's actually to make more leaders, all right? If you've got this mentality in your mind that, oh gosh, I'm so valuable, the moment that I leave this company, it's going to fall or it's going to fail, you've got the wrong mindset, right? Our mindset should be, you know what, I'm going to take a 4-week vacation and they might not even notice that I'm gone. If that's our mindset, what we're going to do? Daily, we're going to look for opportunities to empower other individuals. We're going to consider all the duties and responsibilities we have. We're going to compare that with the strengths of the people on our team. We're going to do some matching, and then we'll sit down and intentionally say, hey, Kevin, you know what? Here's the deal. I've got these 2 responsibilities that I've been doing. I've noticed that you have these 4 different strengths, and I think these strengths can contribute these responsibilities. I'm going to teach and train you for a little bit. And then in the end, what I want to give you full authority. I want to give you power, which is the root word of that empower word. I'm going to give you power to be over these responsibilities. I'll back up. I won't micromanage. I won't even get involved in your business. If you got questions, certainly come talk to me. But this is going to be your baby, your project, your responsibilities, and I'm going to help you get there. That's what empowerment is. And the greatest asset that any company, any business, any nonprofit, any organization has, the greatest asset is not the machinery, it's not the building, it's not the amount of money that's in the savings account, it's the people. And it's the only asset that grows with time if you take the time to invest into it, if you take the time to develop it. So empowering other individuals is critically important. It's the number one job of every leader. Let's just wake up in the morning every single day and say, hey, how can I make somebody's life better today? What can I do to be able to lessen my load of responsibility and help other people grow through that responsibility?
And I want to zero in for a second on the 5 traits of a good leader, because you seem to have a thought on that as well. So I'm wondering if you could expand on that for me.
Yeah. There's a whole lot of traits of leadership we could talk about. You could write books. I mean, half these books back here are about traits of leadership, right?
I'll go pop some popcorn and come back, okay?
You might have to, but let me just express maybe what I would consider some of my very top. Care would be one of those. Unconditional care. We love everybody, no matter their walk of life, no matter what they've done. We always care. It's like a father to son relationship or mother to daughter relationship. We're going to be there. So unconditional care, I think, is important in leadership. Another one that I think is really important, you've already mentioned, is the ability to listen. So great leaders are great listeners. A third one would be that they place people first, as we've discussed before already. Number 4, I'd probably say authentic. I think there was a time when leaders had to be all that and more, right? We just would put them up on a pedestal and think, wow, they're just so incredible and amazing. And I think there was a disconnect that happened between people being led and the leader because we thought they were quote unquote perfect. What I've seen over the course of the last several years is people really don't care about that. People care more about seeing you as a real human. Like, oh, you make mistakes. You don't have all the answers. You can't solve all the problems. That's actually a good thing because neither can I, right? So I can relate to that individual. So authenticity, I think, is really, really critical. And then if I were to choose a 5th one, number 5 would be passion. Passion. You've got to show up to work every single day just excited about people and excited about what you're doing as a business. You are the hope dealer, right? You've got to walk into work and walk into where the people are at, just with this overwhelming sense of passion about what we're doing, what we're trying to accomplish. So again, there's a lot of things we could talk about. But I would put those as my top 5 probably.
And Jason, I'm also wondering your thought on how we can grow from failure to be a good leader as well.
Mm-hmm. So I mentioned my story at the onset, and I said that story because I think a lot of people can relate. Maybe you're not hiding out in a portable classroom, but I think all of us are probably in a position where like, can I do this? We're frustrated because something we're doing is not quite working. And one of the greatest things that I did is just accept reality that I'm not perfect, that we make mistakes. A turning point for us when I was working with the junior high was I gathered together, after I talked to all these folks and got an understanding of where I was at, I gathered together all the staff and we had a 10-minute staff meeting. And I said, guys, here's what you've told me. And I listed out all the things that they told me about my leadership. Here's what I'm going to do to improve. I want you to know I'm going to try very hard at this. I want you to know that I need your help to do it. And I want you to call me out when you see me not doing it. 10 minutes. We concluded the meeting and I sent them on their way. That changed the culture of the whole entire school because I was willing to admit where my failures were at. I think we have to embrace them and recognize that these are moments of growth. Kevin, if you asked me, if I wanted to kind of skip the whole junior high portable classroom experience, there's parts of me that would say, absolutely. That was hell for like 5 months. Okay. But there's also a very big part of me that would say, no, I needed those failures because there's no greater time in my entire life that I grew as much as when I grew there. Right? It's our mistakes and our problems and our failures where we grow the most, not our successes and victories.
Yeah, and Jason, my final question for you is, when you finish your professional contribution to the world, what do you hope your legacy is remembered for? And finally, if people want to get connected with you, how can they do that, buddy?
Yeah, absolutely. So I love how you use the word legacy. Leaders should be thinking about legacy a lot. What's going to happen when we leave? How are people going to talk about us? What do you want people to write on your tombstone, right? For me, it's this. I just hope to be remembered as a guy that tries every day to add value to people who will add value to others. That's my goal. It's a multiplication thing. I want to be able to help people grow. I want to be able to help make leadership easier for folks. I want to give tools and strategies and practices to people so they can maybe not endure the portable classroom as much as I had to endure it. And my hope there is that as I empower these leaders, they'll also empower other people. And so my reach will be beyond even what I could conceive at this present time. If I'm there yet, I don't know. Will I ever get there? I don't know. But I wake up every day trying to get there. I think that's what's important. Kevin, if people want to get a hold of me, there's a resource that I have actually, and I was thinking about this podcast and what I could offer. One of the biggest concerns that people have when it comes to focusing on others is I just don't have time, right? Jason, I'd sit down and write a card to somebody, but I just don't have time. Jason, I'd sit down and do a one-on-one with somebody, but I just don't have time. Jason, they just keep telling me that they don't have time. So I created a resource. It's 11 strategies to hack time. 11 time-finding strategies, completely free. If they want to be able to get that, it's just simply for your listeners. I created it and uploaded it on a webpage for you guys. And you can get it at going to www.influencingforimpact, and you spell it for F-O-R, influencingforimpact.com/time, T-I-M-E. Again, influencingforimpact/time. There you also find all my social media. So I'm on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn and all the other kinds of places. So you can be able to connect with me anyway that way, even if you don't want the resource. The connections are there at the bottom of the screen. So that's how you can get a hold of. If you want to start a conversation or follow with me, I try to provide a whole lot of free material out there in the world just because I want to add value.
Fantastic, Jason. I want to really thank you for spending a few minutes with me talking effective leadership strategies. Really enjoyed our conversation. And I want to thank you for being here today. It's most appreciated.
You are welcome. Fun to be on the show.